All right, welcome to week 18. Crazy week of fantasy football ahead of us. I know most of you are usually would be done with the season long fantasy football, but at least in a few of my leagues, and I know in some of yours, we're using these week 18 scores for the Bills and Bengals. So shout out to Damar Hamlin, breathing tube out, talking with his teammates on FaceTime. Rob was saying, Patriots fans, not looking good for you. This is a team of destiny this week. They're going to absolutely smash the Patriots, according to Rob. Um, but really good news out of Buffalo. Really scary situation there. But this week, it's my Christmas. That's why I'm in my childhood bedroom right now. Orthodox Christians, shout out to those that are watching. Of all our viewers, I'm sure some of them are Orthodox Christians. And yeah, an interesting week. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I can't believe it's week 18. Yeah, last week was pretty crazy. Every week we're here talking about these guys as investments, and then, humbling really quick to see that they're human beings. They're very vulnerable out there. So, you know, definitely kind of hit everyone different. But yeah, I can't believe it's week 18, man. Last one of the season. So, ready to finish strong. I think most teams have a lot to play for this week. A couple don't. So, can give everyone the heads up on who we should be targeting, who we should be avoiding, and one last opportunity to make some money on a big slate.
Yeah, in terms of motivation, there's so much talk about it nowadays in terms of how the playoff picture affects fantasy football, especially DFS and Week 18. That I kind of just I tend to maybe underreact relative to the field because I do think that the field will overreact to a lot of this. And I'll kind of let the projections guide. So if the projection sources that we're using and the projections from Goodard AI are going to dock someone like Daniel Jones, who isn't probably going to play a whole lot, if at all, then I'll obviously adjust accordingly, and the projections will adjust accordingly. Whereas I think you can get yourself into some trouble if you try to overcorrect for some of this stuff. But yeah, like you said, I think a lot of teams are going to end up playing like a normal week. There are a few spots that we'll highlight where there's really no motivation and actually might be a benefit to rest their starters, get an extra bye week for those starters. But right off the bat, let's start up here at QB. Two quarterbacks at the top of the list here in terms of ownership. We got Jalen Hurts. Should be back this week against a Giants team that has nothing to play for and has actually come out and said that they're going to rest their starters, and projections are kind of reacting to that. And also Josh Allen. Both are expensive. We noted the Buffalo Bills do have a lot to play for this week in terms of seeding and for their buddy Damar Hamlin. I'm sure they'll be really motivated for a lot of different reasons. Both have high team totals, high-ish over under relative to the rest of the slate. There's no games over 45 points over under this week, that's on the lower end. Typically, we at least have a few that are over 45 points. Like I said, both are going to be popular and both come with a price tag over $88,000 on Draftkings. So, of these two quarterbacks, I guess if you had to pick one of Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, who you pick him?
I think probably Josh Allen. It seems more likely that he can be pushed to his ceiling, given the Patriots do have something to play for. They're fighting for their season. Um, these divisional games can sometimes be more competitive the second time around. But yeah, like I was saying to you earlier, I think this could be a game where the Patriots just get blown out of the water. But at least you have the opportunity for maybe the Patriots to keep it competitive and maybe to push Josh Allen to hit his ceiling. He's been putting up numbers against the Patriots left and right the last few times he's played them. So I like him a lot. Jalen Hurts, obviously a great option too. But if the Giants aren't playing anything and this turns into a blowout at halftime, I mean, that's a tough thing to speculate on, but, you could certainly see that happening. But the Eagles have something to play for. They're still playing for the number one seed. I think either one are probably pretty viable and might let ownership kind of guide me on that one. But I think as far as the ceiling goes, um, you know, that game script is probably more likely for Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Philly, so I think I'm on Jalen Hurts, and it's simply just the $200 discount. He carries a little bit of risk. I actually haven't projected higher than Josh Allen. Um, Yeah, it's tough. You make a really good point about the Giants maybe not pushing the Eagles, and with Jalen Hurts coming into this game off of a two-game being injured for 2 games where he didn't play, you could see if they're up at halftime by 3 touchdowns, we might not see much of Jalen Hurts in the second half. So that's certainly within the range of outcomes. That's certainly a tough one. I do think that maybe the wise thing to do, I think for like both of these quarterbacks are going to be so popular. Another team that has something to play for on the road against the Bears is Kirk Cousins after getting embarrassed in division against the Packers. The Bears pass defense is really, really banged up. Justin Jefferson's going for the receiving record. 193 yards would be a monster, like 1%, top 1% outcome. But I mean, if it's the fourth quarter and he's sitting at 150 yards, which he is often, like they might just keep feeding him to get him that record. So I really like Kirk Cousins this week. He's showing up in a lot of the optimal lineups that I'm running. How do you feel about Captain Kirk this week after a really bad game last week against the Packers?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good. He's in a pretty good spot against the Bears. They still have something to play for, and like you said, there's an incentive there for Justin Jefferson too. He's 6,500. I'm not as on him this week as I am someone else in a similar price range. Dak Prescott at 6,600 going up against the Commanders. The Cowboys still have something to play for. If things for some reason go horribly wrong for the Eagles and Dallas wins, that's the difference of a divisional winner right there. So I kind of like Dak at 6,600 this week against the Commanders, who rank 25th in the league in passing touchdowns allowed. He'd be in a pretty good spot there. And his ownership right now, I don't even know if this is correct. I feel like this might be a mistake, but under 1%. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, not a lot of people are on him. I just think on the road against Washington's like a pretty bad matchup just in general. Their defense is pretty solid under Ron Rivera, but certainly, I mean, they're trotting out Sam Howell. That defense creates a lot of turnovers. We might get plenty of short fields for Dak Prescott, and I do think they're tougher against the run than they are against the pass. So,
Yeah,
I kind of like that Dak Prescott call.
I'd emphasize too that it's the ownership there that's really pulling me in, and his price point too. But like if you're trying to get away from the chalkier Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen's of the world, I mean, if Dak Prescott's going to be under 1%, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, another guy to take a look at here that's popular. We should talk about is Andy Dalton against the Panthers that just got torched by Tom Brady and Mike Evans. Do you have any interest in Andy Dalton this week at home against Carolina? The Saints are not really a team that has a whole lot to play for, but I haven't heard anything in terms of them not really. They're not going to rest starters or anything. I think it's going to be another game for them for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. His price dropped all the way down to 4,800. When I was looking at receivers, I did have some interest in Chris Olave. So yeah, I don't know. I just think there's more upside with some of the other quarterbacks here. I probably won't have as much Andy Dalton, but I guess at 4,800, he is tough to ignore. Against a Saints secondary that's kind of struggled this year. They ranked 20th in the league in passer rating allowed, 23rd in the league in pass touchdowns allowed. We've seen Andy Dalton have a couple of big games this year. So, hey, he's kind of still fighting for a job in his career, in the latter part of his career. So maybe he wants to show that, he can still be sharp this late in the season and hopefully keep him employed for another season or two. So, yeah, I think he's a fine option at that price.
Yeah, and then another guy we can talk about here is Russ Wilson, 5,400, another really cheap price tag. Projects decently well. Not a lot of people are going to play him, even though he's starting to kind of come on here, especially under the interim coach. He put up over 20 points last week against the Chiefs. He had another solid game against the Chiefs a couple weeks before that. And Denver's out of it, obviously, after a really poor, disappointing season. But, I mean, Russ has a lot of his weapons healthy. He certainly wants to get this ship turned around to kind of have this franchise believe in him a little bit more. So I'm certainly into him. And against a Chargers team that could have something to play for, they can improve their seed if they win. But I think going into this afternoon game, they might know if they have anything to play for or not. And if they don't, you could see them rest some defensive starters and let Russ cook a little bit. So it's tough to click on Russ, but this might be the week to do it. What do you think about that?
No thanks. I can't do it. Yeah, even in the matchup, even though he's kind of come along, I think it's more likely that he has a floor game than a ceiling game on any given week. So I probably won't be getting after Russell Wilson this week. Excuse me. How
Yeah.
about let's talk about Joe Burrow for a second here, because we had him coming in as our second most optimal quarterback this week, being optimal 7%. He's got a tough matchup against the Ravens, but we've seen this Bengals team tee off on the Ravens from time to time. And you can get Joe Burrow at under 6% ownership this week. And they still have something to play for as well, as do the Ravens. It could be a competitive game. Kind of, and they are 9-point favorites. So even in a game that's an over under at 40, any interest in some Joe Burrow stacks this week?
Yes, because I have interest in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Hayden Hurst. So certainly someone I'm interested in when you're talking about stack options. So yeah, I think that with his price tag, people are going to kind of shy away from the Ravens just as a generally good defense. But they're at home; they have something to play for. Whereas Baltimore, they don't, but they actually do. They could get a win, a Chargers win, a coin toss win, and then they're hosting a playoff game. So divisional game could get a little weird with Baltimore and Cincinnati. Certainly, I mean, yeah, it's a tough matchup, but I mean, Joe Burrow could certainly get it done. Also coming off that emotional game, and they might bounce back in a big way as well. So yeah, I like the Joe Burrow call. Another guy the optimizer likes for the first time all year is Deshaun Watson, which kind of gross for a lot of different reasons. But the way you beat the Steelers is through the air. And yeah, I think Deshaun Watson could have some success after his best game of the year last year against who did they play last week? Drawing a blank. I'll have to look that up. But he had a solid game against the Commanders last week, actually. So
Was the Commanders? Okay.
yeah, so he might be figuring out that offense, and yeah, the Steelers have a really tough run defense and not so great passing defense. So you could target him at 5,600 as well. All right, we got Geno Smith against the Rams at home. I think Geno's trying to play himself into a little bit bigger of a contract. He has kind of disappointed in the back quarter of the season after vying for comeback player of the year or breakout player of the year, whatever you want to call him. LA is not a really formidable matchup, and he had a decent game against them the first time these two teams met. We're going to get DK Metcalf squaring off against Jalen Ramsey, but he moves around plenty, and Jalen has not been shadowing or has been dominant this year. So I could see him and Tyler Lockett, maybe Seattle double stacks in Week 18 could bring home the millie. And then finally, this is probably a cost-adjusted situation. Everybody was really excited to play Sam Ehlinger when he was really cheap his first start. I don't really have a whole lot of interest in him, but at 5K, projected for around 15 points against a really bad Houston team who they need to lose to secure that number one pick. So they have motivation actually to not play well. So any interest in these really cheap QBs, Sam Ehlinger, Geno Smith, or are you more content to go with Andy Dalton or you already said you were out on Russell Wilson?
Yeah, no interest in Smith or Sam Ellinger. Ellinger burned me at 4,000 in his first game this year, so no interest there. One last name I'll throw out there: Joe Flacco has been named the starter for the Jets this week against that Miami secondary that's been having a tough time. He's even cheaper than Andy Dalton. He's 4,800. He had a couple decent games early in the season. He only needs 25 points for an upside score. So even like 20 points from Flacco on this one could get it done for you. And that would also be a situation similar to Andy Dalton, where maybe he's competing to keep himself on an NFL roster next year as a backup. So just another cheap name to consider.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to running back, where we have Tyler Algier against a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that doesn't really have a whole lot to play for. They've come out and said that they're going to compete in this game, but I don't anticipate the starters on either side of the ball staying out there for the full game. If they do, it is a tough matchup for Algier, but even given that, he's projected for around 14 points at 5,600. He's going to be pretty popular. Not the most popular back on the slate. That will go to Christian McCaffrey against against the Arizona Cardinals, who have one of the worst run defenses in the league. Let's go ahead and sort by ownership here to see who people are going to be playing this week. Yeah, so it looks like people are content to pay up a little bit with Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. I'll ask you the same or a similar question here. If you have to pay up at running back at one spot, are you more into McCaffrey or Cook against the Chicago Bears defense that sucks against the run?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably just play the safe bet and go with McCaffrey. He's been limited in practice this week, so that's something to watch. But Dalvin Cook, I don't think he's had a 30-point game all year long. Obviously, he's in a great spot, and just because he hasn't hit that mark yet this season doesn't mean that he won't. I just kind of tend to play more conservatively. But I guess he is a lot cheaper though too. So I mean, I guess it's not a bad option. I think I might be more inclined to go with Austin Eckler from spending up. But yeah, those are decent options. But I think I'd roll with McCaffrey against that dumpster fire of a Cardinals game.
Yeah, I'm gonna have plenty of both. I think, especially if I'm playing Kirk Cousins, just the correlation there between the running back and the quarterback. Another guy to keep an eye on here that we have on our list is Kenneth Walker. Really strong rookie season, kind of in and out of the lineup, has come on as of late. Kenneth Walker, Aaron Donald's out for the Rams, so just keep that in mind. And in the past 2 weeks, 4 running backs have cleared more than 19 fantasy points against the Rams. So Kenneth Walker, really talented guy, should finish his rookie season really strong. So keep an eye out for him. He's going to be popular as well. And like I mentioned, Tyler Algier in a solid spot against a team that doesn't have a whole lot to play for. Another guy to keep an eye on. Again, it's hard to trust Najee Harris. I know he had a good game last week, but our optimizer seems to like him. You have any interest in Najee Harris in a must-win game against the Browns here, who are beatable against the run and not so much against the pass?
Yeah, I think I do. I think your Pittsburgh Steelers kind of impressed me. That was a gutsy win they had against the Ravens last week, and Najee Harris looked great. I mean, it's just been that it hasn't been really Najee Harris. I mean, his numbers have been not putrid all season long. He just really didn't have a ceiling. So I think in this game where they do have to win, Kenny Pickett's kind of been getting in a little bit of a groove. This offense has been playing substantially better than they were earlier in the year. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good matchup for him against this run funnel of a Cleveland Browns run defense. They rank 30th in the league in rush yards per attempt allowed. They rank 24th in the league in rushing touchdowns allowed. So I mean, yeah, it's a great matchup, and I definitely think I'm gonna eat the chalk there on Najee Harris this week. I think I'm interested in that.
Yeah, another guy that I think is going to end up being really chalky because I've heard him talked about a lot, and if that's the case, then I think I'm going to be fully out. But Zach Moss gets the best matchup against 4 running backs in the Houston Texans, who, like I said before, should be actively trying to lose this game, just in case the Bears also lose. But he's at 5,200. Right now, only projected for around 5% ownership, but he is getting 66% of the offensive snaps. He has a 69% rushing share, pretty nice number there. And like I said, it's the league's worst defense in Houston. So do you think Zach Moss is going to be popular this week, despite what the ownership projections have right now? Or and if not, are you interested in him at all?
I mean, yeah, that's definitely one where ownership would kind of drive my decision on that one. I was kind of thinking he might be popular since the Texans have given up so many points on the ground this year. And you can get Zach Moss pretty cheap at just 5,200. So he is intriguing. If he is 5% owned, yeah, I'll probably take some shots. It'd be a great way to make some other guys fit into your lineups. But if he did end up being popular, that's probably chalk I would fade because it's Zach Moss and it's Sam Ellinger. And, I don't know how confident I am that they're going to be able to put a lot of points on the board. They only have an implied team total of 20 points, which actually surprises me. That seems a little bit high to me.
Yeah, and then we have Miles Sanders at home in a must-win game with a quarterback that may be coming back a little bit earlier than he should from this injury. Um, I really like Miles Sanders this week. He had 28.5 PPR points against the Giants the first time the two met. Like I said, Giants should be resting some starters. Even if they weren't, they're a really, really solid matchup for opposing running backs. And like I said, you may see a few more Miles Sanders carries and a few less Jalen Hurts carries, especially with that injury. You have any interest in our boy Miles Sanders?
Yeah, I don't know. He feels risky to me too. I think if the Eagles get out to a big lead, I mean, they have no problem giving the ball to guys like Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell. So he is actually someone I'm gonna probably gonna be avoiding this week at 5,900. It is a pretty good matchup, but I'm just kind of concerned about his usage. It seems like they're not even giving him the ball in situations where he should be giving him the ball. So he's been kind of volatile in his usage this season.
Yeah, definitely volatile. It's kind of a touchdown or bust, but I think I like betting on him when he's not popular, and I don't think he's going to be super popular this week. And I do think there's a chance that they kind of give him a few more looks down there at the red zone, maybe to avoid as many Jalen Hurts hits as possible coming off that shoulder injury. Another guy the optimizer likes, which at first glance doesn't seem like a great matchup, but the Ravens are 15th against the opposing fantasy running backs, and you have Joe Mixon again in a must-win game after Najee Harris kind of ran all over him. Kind of like Joe Mixon this week. Doesn't seem like a lot of people are going to be on him. If you're playing Joe Burrow, you can do the double stack, or you could stack him with Joe Mixon and one of his receivers. So I really like Joe Mixon this week. Yeah, this Ravens team got gashed last week for sure. Was Joe Mixon showing up for you at all?
Yeah, definitely. He looks pretty good. If the pace of this game slows down, yeah, he could be in a good spot, especially if Joe Burrow's having trouble getting the ball downfield. That Ravens secondary has improved as the season has gone on. So, you could see them maybe rely on Mixon a little bit more if the game script comes to that. And yeah, if he's right now, we got his ownership right around 8%. So he'd be a way to get contrarian in terms of paying up for running backs goes. But he's not too pricey at 7,100.
Yeah, yeah, certainly a good pivot off of Dalvin Cook, especially if you're worried about Dalvin Cook's shoulder late in the season. If Dalvin Cook's going to be that popular, Joe Mixon is a fantastic pivot, I think. Another guy on this list here is Cam Akers, who has really like Undertaker meme, like just completely come out of nowhere to really have some solid usage late in the season. Cam Akers is going up against I'm sorry, he's going up against the Seahawks, who are absolutely horrible against the run and pretty solid against the pass. So look for Cam Akers to get some pretty solid usage. He'll be somewhat popular, but nothing to really fade at 6,200 against the second worst defense against opposing running backs. So I really like Cam Akers this week. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it feels chalky. What's his ownership's only is 14%. So I think that's the only thing that would deter me, but it is a really great matchup. Seattle has been another one of those run funnel defenses this year. They rank 30th in the league in rush touchdowns allowed and 24th in the league in rush yards per attempt allowed. So he would be in a pretty good spot. Um, so yeah, I think he'll probably have some exposure to Cam Akers, but maybe not as much as the field.
Yeah. Is there anybody kind of off the board here that you're targeting this week? That kind of about does it for me in
So,
terms of running back. Pretty straightforward in
so,
terms of
ju-
running back, I think, this week.
so just in terms of some salary savers, some contrarian plays, Jonathan Williams is going to be starting for the Commanders this week. Obviously, going up with the Cowboys, a terrible matchup, but he's only 4,300. This is a guy who has fresh legs. If he gets the ball, he doesn't care that it's week 18. He's gonna be trying. He's gonna be trying to make a name for himself. And his ownership right now is under 1%. So again, if you're looking to save and get a starting running back who's going to get some snaps and going to get some usage because there isn't going to be any Antonio Gibson or Brian Robinson, Jonathan Williams is an option. Some other salary savers are Corey Clement or Keontae for the Cardinals. What's his last name?
Keontae Ingram.
Keontae Ingram. Those guys are both under 5,000, and James Conner was just declared inactive for this week. So those are some other potential options. But obviously, they're going up against the 49ers, which is another terrible matchup. So this is really in terms of a dart throw, low owned play that is also a salary saver. I'll probably have some exposure to those guys to get different and hopefully get some upside.
Yeah, there's a lot of running backs down here in the really low ownership that I wouldn't mind taking a stab at. Specifically, I think James Cook. I just think like overall his projection's probably lower than it should be, considering that every single week he seems to get more and more work out of that backfield, and I think they kind of like the explosiveness they get out of him, whereas Devin Singletary is a solid back. He's going to get you what's blocked for him, but he doesn't really create a whole lot of production in terms of making people miss and whatnot. So we'll see if James Cook kind of emerges in week 18 here and maybe takes over that backfield a little bit. Would love to be a week early on that and not a week late. So I might boost his projection a little bit to be a little bit more in line, even though that Patriots defense is pretty solid against opposing running backs. So that would be my off the board play for this week in terms of contrarian running backs. Let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. All right. Just doing some production on the fly here. Okay. And Garrett Wilson is at the top of our list. After a few disappointing weeks, he is, I think, the favorite still for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's got a pretty solid matchup here against the Dolphins. Do you have any interest in Garrett Wilson while I pull up some stats about him?
Yeah, I think he seems to play better with quarterbacks not named Zach Wilson. Mike White this week, but it will be Joe Flacco. Miami Dolphins do not have a great secondary. They rank 22nd in the league in yak allowed. Garrett Wilson, he's been kind of the guy over there. He's got the highest target share in the team at 24%. He's got a pretty solid weighted opportunity rating, which takes into account target share and air yard share. And his efficiency hasn't been too bad either. He's only 1 point below his expected fantasy points per game. So kind of right around where he should be. Of course, he's probably going to be on the negative side given he's on that bad Jets offense. So yeah, I'm willing to take some shots at Garrett Wilson at 5,800 this week.
Yeah, at 5,800, he's going to be somewhat popular, but some next gen scheme stats here. He runs a lot of deep crosses, which fare really, really well against cover 1 and cover 3, which is what the Dolphins run more than any other coverage. So you should see him targeted plenty this week. And if they're motivated to do anything, they're motivated to maybe win defensive rookie of the year with Sauce Gardner and offensive rookie of the year with Garrett Wilson. That'd be a pretty cool way to end their season to get those two accolades. So I like him a lot. Agree with the optimizer there. And then we touched on Justin Jefferson, who looks to be the most popular play this week against that banged up Chicago secondary. 193 yards is the number to beat to get that receiving record, to beat Calvin Johnson in 18 games rather than 17 games. But people aren't really going to care about that in 4 months when the record books are updated and we're looking at those graphics on ESPN. Any reason to fade Justin Jefferson this week for you? Or are we just going to plug and play and figure it out from there?
Yeah, if he's going to be popular, that's a reason to fade him right there at 24%. The salary at 9,100, he's going to need that 200 yards and a couple touchdowns to get you there. If you fade him, you're getting leverage on 75% of the field. And that's kind of probably more appealing to me. So yeah, I'll definitely be below the field on Justin Jefferson this week, given his salary and what he needs to. I got him at a 42 point for an upside score. So I'm not as attracted to that one as the field, especially in large field tournaments.
Yeah, I think it could be, like I said, I'm into Kirk Cousins. It could be as easy as maybe pivoting to KJ Osborne or Adam Thielen because I do think that they're going to move the ball really well against Chicago on the road in a must-win game for their seeding purposes. But that's an interesting one. Kind of going off the board a little bit here for the second week in a row. Jahan Dotson is quietly kind of taking over as the number one option over there. I mean, I'm not saying he's more talented than Terry McLaurin. It's just he has 7 targets last week. He didn't convert a few easy catches, so his box score isn't really showing up as good as it could have been otherwise. But over the past 5 weeks, Dotson has 63.2 PPR points, a 24% target share, and 4 end zone targets. With Sam Howell at quarterback, I mean, I don't think it can get much worse than Carson Wentz. So I have some interest in Jahan Dotson this week as kind of an off the board play. I'm not sure if you do. I'm not sure if he shows up in any of your stuff over there. But what do you think about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think like just he's gonna scare people off because of Sam Howell. 'Cause I don't know anything about the kid. I just know that he's the third. He's apparently worse than Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz. So that kind of scares me off from the Commanders receiving core as a whole. I'm probably gonna fade them entirely. But that's just me. I don't think I can jump on that ship with them going up against that Dallas defense. I just don't really see a lot of ceiling potential there.
I would say that Dallas's defense is their secondary is a little bit banged up, and they've allowed the fifth most fantasy points to receiver overall and to the perimeter this season. And their rookie corner, last name Wright, opposite of Trayvon Diggs, has been really heavily targeted. You have to imagine that Diggs will probably follow Terry McLaurin around a little bit more this game and kind of leave Jahan Dotson up against a fellow rookie. And no Commanders wide receiver had a great game the first time these two met in week 5. But like I said, they're really banged up in that Cowboys secondary. So I kind of like the Commanders receiving options this week. Another rookie that we can maybe take a look at this week. It seems like the field's going to be interested in Rashid Shaheed against the Carolina secondary. You could also take a look at Chris Olave against that Carolina secondary that just allowed Chris Godwin and Mike Evans to absolutely shred them. I mean, Andy Dalton double stacks. Why not? Why not? Do you have any interest in this Rashid Shaheed that's kind of really come out of nowhere as one of the more exciting rookie wide receivers in the whole class, of a solid rookie wide receiver class?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be, I think, really chalky this week. He's only 4,200, which seems crazy to me. I mean, he's been putting up solid points in some of these just terrible matchups. I mean, in that game they played a couple weeks ago, within like the 40-mile-per-hour winds, he still turned in a decent stat line given those weather conditions. We know he can bust off the big plays that can help you get to that ceiling. I mean, yeah, I think the only reason I wouldn't play him is because I think he's going to be chalky at what's his ownership right now, 17% owned. So yeah, if you are going to play him, I love the idea of playing him with Andy Dalton, and why don't you throw Chris Olave in there too? It's a very affordable stack, and then you can go spend up and get guys like Christian McCaffrey and Justin Jefferson. So I think that's how I'd go with Shaheed. If I'm going to play him, I'm playing him with Andy Dalton.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid way to approach that for sure. Any reason you're seeing here? Why is Jacoby Myers going to be popular this week? I mean, is it just 5,100 for a wide receiver one on a team that's probably going to have to throw the ball a lot to keep up with Buffalo? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, his weighted opportunity rating, he's right around 0.5, which is it's pretty solid. He's going to be like in the upper third of the league in that category. He's just getting the target share and he's getting the air yard share and he's cheap, and that's what it boils down to. I mean, he's good value if he hits his projection of 12 points or higher. And I don't hate the play. I mean, the Patriots are going to be passing in this. I want to be unbiased, but I don't think this team is going to roll over and die. I do think that they're going to lose, but I think Mac Jones in their offense, maybe they keep it competitive for the first half. So I think he's okay, but yeah, I've said this before. Buyer beware on any Patriots wide receivers. That's been true since the beginning of time, even with Tom Brady. They've just never really had that kind of receiving core. But that's probably why he is popular. He's going to get the opportunities.
Yeah, I'm not moving down the list here in terms of ownership. We got Brandon Cooks and Deontay Johnson popping up as kind of somewhat popular. I don't see either really getting to 13 or 14% ownership is with what we have them here. And even if they do, they're really fantastic fades because Cleveland does have a solid passing defense, and Kenny Pickett, not a high volume passer. Brandon Cooks is going to see plenty of Stephon Gilmore. He did fine in the first matchup between these two teams, but I do think that Gilmore will follow him around and shadow him. So he's a downgrade for me, as is Deontay Johnson. It's safe to downgrade that whole Pittsburgh passing offense. Fryermuth is even in a bad matchup and didn't do very well against them in the first time these two teams met against Cleveland. I need to check on that. Was that Kenny Pickett that started against them, or was that a Mitchell Trubisky? I need to look into that because that's important because you could see that game kind of. I don't know that all of the Pittsburgh receiving options will meet their projection or exceed it, but I certainly think that that's one that you can bet against what is perceived as a bad matchup. For sure. Maybe that's just my Steelers bias coming out,
No,
but
I
yeah.
mean,
What do you think
I
about
was
the?
gonna, yeah, I was gonna add. I mean, Deontay Johnson and Brandon Cooks last and third to last in the league in points over expected. Deontay Johnson is averaging 4 points below what he's expected, and the reason acting so well is because he has those opportunities, right? We expect him to get fantasy points with the air yards and the targets that he's getting. And that's why his projections always turn out well, but he's never hitting them. Which just doesn't happen. Usually, when NFL wide receivers are getting those opportunities, usually they turn them into something. Not, I mean, to go 4 points below Deontay Johnson, he's by far the lowest in the league, and then Brandon Cooks third. We talked about this last week. I think Brandon Cooks' ceiling days are behind him. But again, when you're getting those opportunities, you're going to get good projections. But this is when we need to recognize that it's just not going to happen, and that those days are kind of behind those guys. So definitely two guys I'm going to be fading this week.
Yep. The next guy here is Stephon Diggs. If you're playing Josh Allen, really recommend playing just the Stephon Diggs and or Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is going to see plenty of single high coverage against the Patriots. That's via next gen stats. And those go routes, those deep curls, deep comeback routes are really effective against them. And yeah, you're going to see plenty of opportunity for the Bills passing game. And if Bill Belichick does kind of take away Stephon Diggs, I know it's been disappointing this year trying to target Gabe Davis, but I think this might be a week where he could pull through for you for sure. Another guy that I bring up almost every single week and he keeps disappointing is Drake London against that Bucks team that has nothing to play for. He's had 40 targets in his past 4 games, though. I think they're trying to see what they have. I mean, not see what they have, but I mean, in a lost season, get your rookies going, get them as many reps as you possibly can. I feel like I ask you this question a lot. You gonna be playing Drake London? Or you? I feel like the Falcons might be a full fade for you in terms of bad teams.
Um, I agree with you that his usage has really turned up in the last couple weeks with Desmond Ritter. I mean, kind of when they had Marcus Mariota, he could run the ball, so they were incorporating those designed runs a lot more. So um, yeah, I don't hate the Drake London play. He's actually 10th on this slate in weighted opportunity rating. So yeah, he's getting those good opportunities. Got a high target share. He's got most of the air yards, and he's 4,900. So I mean, you got to save money somewhere. I think he's as good of a salary saver as any on this slate. Um, at 13% owned, I'll probably be below the field on him, but I won't be fading him this week like I have so many weeks before.
Yeah, I think we might be burying the lead a little bit here, which a lot of people are, and I'm not sure what's going on, but the Eagles wideouts have a fantastic matchup, even if the New York Giants play their starters. And they're not. I don't see why Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. I'm sure it has something to do with their price tags. I'm going to be boosting their projections to get pretty heavily overweight on the field. How do you feel about the Eagles receivers in this game?
Yeah, absolutely. At their price points, I mean, AJ Brown at 4.3%. I got him number 7 on the slate in weighted opportunity rating. He's averaging 4.2 points over expected fantasy points this season, which is one of the highest on the slate. So yeah, if you're going to be paying up, I think he's in a great spot to do so. If Jalen Hurts plays, you got to imagine the Eagles don't want him running the ball as much, right? Which means he's got to be throwing. If he's throwing against a bunch of second string defensive backs, he could feast. I mean, you might only need one half of AJ Brown football to get you there, or Devontae Smith. Those guys have been finishing in the top 10, 15 wide receiver spots, the last several weeks. So definitely like both of them, even at their price points.
Yeah, another guy that I don't mind is Amari Cooper against that Steelers passing defense that's just not very good. No one's going to play Amari Cooper. He's been quietly one of the best receivers in the league this year, even with Jacoby Brissett. Seems like him and Watson are starting to develop a little bit of a rapport. I could see a Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper stack working out this week for sure. So keep that on your radar. And then two that might be a little bit gross. One that might be a little bit gross is, let's not forget that this Vikings defense is just absolutely awful. And I know we're getting Nathan Peterman, but the Vikings have been allowing the second most fantasy points to wide receiver this season. So Chase Claypool, Equanimous St. Brown, Dante Pettis could be some solid salary savers. I'm not saying to stack them up, but you could see one or two of them find the end zone at really cheap price tags this week. Speaking of which, another one at 3,400. This seems like a little bit of a misprice given his projection. In a bad matchup against Seattle, Tutu Atwell could be a solid option as well. 3,400 is really, really cheap for a wide receiver that should get around 4 to 5 targets. So that's a nice salary saver there. Any off the board plays? I just dropped a few pretty gross ones there. Any off the board plays you like this week?
I don't know if off the board is the right word. I will throw out there, by the way, Amari Cooper, shout out. He's third in the league in weighted opportunity rating, so I like him a lot. He's positive in the points over expected fantasy points per game category. Someone I did want to talk about is DJ Moore at 6,100 against the Saints. DJ Moore leads the league in weighted opportunity rating. His points over expected. He's right around where he should be. He's half a point in the positive, which isn't tremendous. But remember that he started the season with Sam Darnold. DJ Moore, we talked about him 6-7 weeks ago. He was in the negatives in that points over expected. He started to come along with whoever's been playing under center, and he's been playing a lot better with Sam Darnold under center. So I like him this week against the Saints, who are kind of middling in pass defense. It's not the greatest matchup in the world, but I'll take some shots at DJ Moore this week, and I'm also willing to take some shots at CD Lamb, another guy we didn't talk about, at 8,200. If you want to stack him up with Dak Prescott, it's affordable, and that's a low-owned stack as well. So those were kind of the two other guys that we didn't really talk about.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid call there. Like I actually forgot about CeeDee Lamb. He's been absolutely balling. They kind of got the mini bye too, coming off that Thursday night game. I think you're onto something there with that Cowboys stacks, because in that matchup, it's certainly easier to move the ball through the air than it will be on the ground against who they playing?
Commanders.
The Commanders, yeah. Like I said before. They should be motivated, especially because there are a few things need to happen, but they could take the division. I believe they could even get the first round bye if things fall their way, for sure. Also, Greg Dortch is just commanding such a high target share. DeAndre Hopkins is out. He's at 3,800. Don't forget about him. Bad matchup, but like I said, can't take you got to take the salary savings there in certain cases, especially if you want to play some of these expensive guys. Some other people we have on our list here. I mentioned Tutu Atwell. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm going to have to fix that. DeAndre Hopkins is out, so keep that in mind. And then Corey Davis, interesting. Corey Davis at 3,500, again, projecting pretty well for a guy that cheap. So keep him in mind as well. And then Jamar Chase at 8,400. These are all, in my opinion, just solid pivots off of Justin Jefferson, who's going to be really, really, really highly owned with people kind of chasing that record that eruption spot for him. So I think that about does it at wide receiver. Let's go ahead and move over to tight end. And at the top of our list here, we have my boy Pat Fryermuth in what is a bad matchup against the Browns. But I do want to mention in the first matchup between these two teams, it was Mitchell Trubisky. And as someone that watches a lot of Steelers games, keep in mind that Kenny Pickett is looking towards one guy when it's crunch time and he needs a first down, and that's Pat Fryermuth. So I think his usage, you could probably speak to that a little bit better than I can. His usage has probably come up since Kenny Pickett has taken over and he's been healthy. Going to be pretty popular, it looks like, and not a great matchup. So I don't blame you if you want to fade that. But how are you feeling about Pat Fryermuth this week?
Yeah, you know what, Nick? I mean, I think you mentioned I might know better because he's on my season-long fantasy team this year. Watching him last week, he is the guy in Pittsburgh that they go to. He's like their version of Travis Kelce. Like when they need a first down and they need a big catch, he's usually targeted. He always seems to get open. But the problem is, if the Steelers can move the ball on the ground, they're going to move the ball on the ground, and that means fewer opportunities and fewer targets for Pat Fryermuth. Given the fact that the Browns are kind of a run funnel defense, I could see that kind of coming into play here. Like for him to get his worth, he's absolutely going to need to find the end zone. I don't see this being one of those games where he could go for like 6 catches and 70 yards and salvage you a day without a touchdown. This could be a 4 or 5 game for him at the most. So I think he'll probably be below the field on him right now, being projected at close to 20% owned.
I think that I'll probably match the field. The optimizer really likes him given his price and what he projects in this what should be a pretty competitive game. Another guy that's going to be popular after coming off a bigger game last week is Mark Andrews at 5,400. I think his price has come pretty far down, considering that he is the highest projected tight end on the slate. No Travis Kelce on the slate, of course. Against a Bengals team, should be a competitive game. It's going to be hard to fit him in. So I think he might not be quite as owned as we have him projected. Do you have a take on that? How do you feel about that projection of almost 20% of people playing him this week?
Yeah, I think if I'm going to go with Mark Andrews this week, it's going to be in game stacks. I think for him to hit his ceiling, that offense is going to need to get going. Let's put it this way. If Mark Andrews gets there, some guys in the Bengals are going to get there. So, I mean, I think it would be a great opportunity to play Joe Burrow with, T. Higgins or Jamar Chase or anyone on that offense and then run it back with Mark Andrews. That's how I'm going to play Mark Andrews this week if I'm spending out for him, is going to be as a run back with some Joe Burrow stacks.
Yeah. Another guy here we mentioned earlier, we are interested in Jalen Hurts, as is the rest of the field, but it seems like, I don't know, are people just going to play Jalen Hurts without some of his receivers? I think a lot of these Eagles ownership projections are going to come up a little bit because people are going to want to play Jalen Hurts and stack him with 1 or 2 options. I certainly like Dallas Goedert at 4,900 against a Giants team that, again, even if they play their starters, they're bad against opposing tight ends. So Dallas Goedert shouldn't, in terms of projection, is not looking to be super chalky. Any interest in him or any other tight ends on this slate?
So I do. Yeah, I mean, I think Dallas Goedert is fine. If you want to stack him with Jalen Hurts, I don't see why not. Again, I think there's going to be a lot more Jalen Hurts passing than running. But someone I have some interest in is Hunter Henry. For the Patriots, we talked about this. They're going to need to be throwing the ball to keep up in a game that they have to win. Jonnu Smith has been out with concussion, and Hunter Henry's has been playing 100% of the snaps. And I think he's run a route on every snap that he played last week. So he's going to have some opportunities. He's only 3,300. But the Patriots get to the red zone. Mac Jones likes to target him in the red zone. He's obviously been disappointing this year compared to last year, but he's 3,300 and only looking to be a 6% owned right now. So I'll probably take some shots at Hunter Henry, and then and of course, I mean, you got to go George Kittle against the Cardinals. Has to be in the equation too.
Yeah, they're really bad against. Yeah, really bad against opposing tight ends, the worst in the league on the season. So definitely like the George Kittle play there. And he's been smashing with Brock Purdy. Another guy to consider in that same division against Seattle, number 30th against opposing tight ends, is Tyler Higbee. He has a 23% target share with Baker Mayfield. He's done really well in good matchups and has 6 red zone targets in that same time span with Baker Mayfield. In the first time these two matched up, John Walford got the start, and Higbee had a disappointing game. But like I said, I think you could see Higbee get there this week for sure. So keep him in mind as well. Really like the Hunter Henry call, especially with that snap percentage. That's pretty crazy. So I will definitely be interested in him this week. Not going to shy away from TJ Hawkinson either. He's been smashing ever since he joined the Vikings. Not a great matchup in Chicago in terms of fantasy production and what Chicago allows to opposing fantasy tight ends. And then I got one off the board here for you is Cade Otton. He might not play all the snaps, but the Falcons D over the last 2 weeks have allowed over 20 points to Juwan Johnson and Trey McBride. So that might be a sneaky one. And I don't know if Cade Otton really is like the type of, I mean, he's young, so I don't know if he will get the benefit of playing limited snaps as a resting starter. What do you think about any of those that I just mentioned?
Yeah, I think the Bucks could land in a situation where maybe they're doing some resting. Cade Otton has been one of Brady's favorite targets this season, so I think that play there definitely has some validity. And since we talked about Andy Dalton and Dak Prescott too, I think Juwan Johnson and Dalton Schultz, either one of those guys, are in pretty decent spots. Juwan Johnson's listed as questionable right now, so you got to watch him on the injury report. But they're both in pretty decent matchups. Juwan Johnson going up against Carolina. They've given up. They rank 19th in the league in touchdowns allowed to tight ends, and that guy always seems to find the end zone. So I got some interest there at 3,700.
Yeah, definitely interesting for sure. Let's take a look at good matchups here. Jelani Woods definitely going to be utilized heavily in that offense against a pretty bad Texans defense. It's pretty thin with Sam Ellinger, so like you like to say, buyer beware. But at 2,900, if you want to punt the position, I think that's where I would go. Tyler Conklin has a pretty solid matchup against a Miami defense that's really struggled as of late. Joe Flacco could kind of lean on his tight end a little bit. He certainly did early in the season when he got some starts when Zach Wilson was hurt. Other than that, I think we've kind of exhausted this horrible tight end position. I'm really glad this season is going to be behind us, and hopefully next season they either adjust pricing for tight end a little bit, or we get a little bit of a better selection there, because it's been a struggle at
Pitts
that
a
position.
quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kyle Pitts needs a quarterback. All right, so for the second week in a row, we got the New England Patriots defense. This was a solid call by us last week. The New England Patriots defense does create turnovers. It seems they scored, I think, 2 defensive touchdowns last week, at least one, right?
Yeah, I think they got 2. I
Yeah,
feel like they've
so
scored a defensive
2,200.
touchdown like 4 straight games.
Yeah, 2,200 against the Bills. Not a lot of people are going to play them, but they project well. I mean, even if they get absolutely blown out, they could get another one of those defensive touchdowns. Ravens against the Bengals is also a solid one. It just looks like the optimizer says, hey, punt defense and then figure it out elsewhere. What kind of defensive strategy are you taking into this week?
I mean, just take a look around the league at how many just kind of garbage quarterbacks are playing, and just take some guys on the other side of the ball. I mean, you got Sam Ellinger, right? Who's playing. So you want to take some shots at Houston at 3,100. I got no problem with that. Let's not forget about Mr. threw 5 interceptions in one half, and Nathan Peterman. Yeah, Minnesota's defense has been bad, but they're 2,900. They're actually projected to be pretty highly owned too. Probably because they're playing against Nathan Peterman. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can go on this slate. I think that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the rusty quarterbacks. You can go with the Jets or Miami with Skylar Thompson and Joe Flacco as the quarterbacks in that game. The Jets are only 2,600. Miami a little bit more expensive at 3,000. So I think that's going to be my strategy this week is target one of those inexperienced or backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, for sure. I think we always say, it's okay to kind of fill out defense last, and if you end up with the Patriots at 2,200, just it's fine. They're a solid defense. Anything can happen in the NFL. But that's enough talk about defense, honestly. Let's go ahead and full send this. Where are you heading this week in terms of what's your favorite stack on the week that you want to full send?
I think, when we first came into this, I was kind of leaning towards Joe Burrow and the Ravens and Mark Andrews. But just kind of as we've talked about it and as I've looked at some more of the numbers and the ownership, I'm kind of leaning towards that Dak Prescott stack. And Michael Gallup's only 4,200, and I just think it's a good spot for him. So I think at that ownership, I think I'm going to have me some Dak Prescott stacks this week.
I really like that a lot. You definitely talked me into keeping him in the player pool. I like to keep it pretty narrow. I like to keep a pretty narrow quarterback pool. And with that, I do think that Kirk Cousins and Viking stacks as a whole is probably a pretty sharp way to approach the slate. I know Justin Jefferson is going to be really popular, but I do think his ownership will be kept in check by that $9,100 price tag. So my favorite stack of the week will be those Viking stacks. But I'm surely going to have a lot of Jalen Hurts stacks as well, especially if his receivers are going to be low owned. I really like going that way with the slate as well. If you had one other play that you wanted to make sure people were on this week, where would you go?
Just any position. We talking stacks?
Any position here.
I think I like that Amari Cooper call a lot. Yeah, they've been, like you said, they've been kind of building rapport. He's been very efficient with his opportunities this season. So I think he's going to be someone I'll probably get over the field on in the wide receiver slot.
Yeah, for me, it's Kenneth Walker. Again, not super low owned. I do think that people will kind of overlook him a little bit this week, so I want to make sure people are on him. And I mean, if we are approaching the Sunday slate and Zach Moss isn't really going to be played, I do think he's a solid salary saver option against the worst run defense in the league. And then, but I will just say those two, neither of them I don't think are super sneaky. So one that I really want to let people know is I really like that James Cook play. I think you want to bet on rookies this late in the season, and I'm going to full send James Cook this week. I'm going to basically project him as I would Devin Singletary and see if I can beat the field, get a week early on the James Cook breakout. So yeah, I think that's all we got. Unless you have anything else you want the people to know about this week's slate.
As always keep an eye on the injury report. There's a couple of questionable guys out there. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long season, but hopefully people can find the green one more time before we get to those smaller playoff slates.
Yes, I believe in us maybe taking one down this week. Not maybe, that was weak. I believe in us taking one down this week in terms of a tournament, whether it's showdown, whether it's the main slate, whether it's that Saturday slate. And I believe that the Steelers will make the playoffs. Unfortunately, at this much to the chagrin of Patriots fans, it just seems like this team is hot and has the right path, the path of least resistance. So good luck to everybody out there rooting for their teams. Good luck to the Patriots and their fans. And thanks for joining us, everybody. Good luck out there this week.